Hey there, lovely soul. Welcome back to Noah Stories. How are you today? I hope you're finding little pockets of peace wherever you are. Today, I have a story that whispers of love lost and found again. A quiet architect, a woman with secrets, a night of rain that changed everything. This is more than a love story. It's a journey through time, truth, and the quiet courage it takes to begin again. So, settle in, breathe deep, and let your heart follow their footsteps. Because sometimes love doesn't fade, it just waits for the right moment to return. That spring, Portofino wore a golden veil of sun and blossoms. Matteo Rinaldi, a rising star in Italian architecture, stepped into the lavish setting of Palazzo d'Oro, where the country's elite gathered for a mid-spring gala. Social events were never Matteo's style, but this time was different. He had just completed the restoration of a historic opera house and was attending as a guest of honor. Still, he entered the grand ballroom with his usual reserved demeanor, eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for something or someone he didn't yet know he was missing. Then he saw her. Isabella De Luca stood near the tall arched window, bathed in silver moonlight. Her emerald gown clung to her frame with effortless grace, and her dark curls spilled down her back like ink on silk. But it was her eyes that stopped him, deep, reflective, as if holding centuries of stories. She laughed softly at something her companion said, and the sound landed in Matteo's chest like a skipped heartbeat. "Who is she?" he murmured aloud. "Isabella De Luca," answered Enzo, his closest friend and business partner. "Lorenzo De Luca's daughter. Off limits, guarded like national treasure." But Matteo didn't hear the warning, at least not with his heart. His feet moved instinctively, drawn to her by a current he couldn't explain. Their eyes met, and the world blurred into silence. "Signorina De Luca," he said, bowing slightly. "My name is Matteo Rinaldi." Her gaze lingered on him before a soft smile played on her lips. "The architect," she replied, her voice like music. "I admired your work on the San Lorenzo restoration." A beginning, simple and delicate, but fate had already begun to weave a story neither of them would ever forget. 3 weeks had passed since their first meeting. Matteo and Isabella had shared a few brief exchanges at art shows, dinners, and chance encounters. Each time their eyes found each other across rooms full of noise and faces, and in those fleeting moments, something stirred. Something undeniable. Then came the rain. They had just left an exhibition at Galleria Moretta when the skies opened over Portofino. Matteo took her hand, laughing as they dashed through the narrow cobblestone streets, soaked and breathless. By the time they reached his apartment near a quiet square, both were dripping wet, their hair clinging to their skin. "Just until the rain stops," Matteo offered as he opened the door. Inside, Isabella wandered slowly, examining the sketches pinned on the walls. Opera houses, old theaters reborn, towers climbing toward sky. She turned to face him, her dress heavy with rain, her eyes brighter than ever. "You see the world not as it is, but as it could be," she said, running her fingers over a charcoal rendering. "You build beauty from brokenness." "And you," Matteo replied softly, "are the most beautiful thing this world has ever promised me." She turned, didn't answer, just placed her hand over his heart and pulled him toward her. That night, with the storm whispering against the windows and candlelight flickering around them, they discovered each other, without fear, without pretense. In that space, nothing else existed. Not the past, not the future. Only a moment suspended in time, where two souls finally recognized their reflection in each other. The next morning, sunlight spilled softly through the windows. But the bed was empty. Isabella was gone. No note, no goodbye, just her coat neatly draped over a chair and the faint scent of her perfume still lingering on the pillow. At first, Matteo thought she had stepped out for coffee or maybe gone for a walk. But as the morning wore on in silence, reality settled in like the chill of a breeze through the open window. She had left. And she hadn't wanted him to know why. For the next week, Matteo searched every corner of Portofino. He visited cafes, galleries, even the DeLuca estate, but met only closed doors, wary glances, and silence thick with unspoken truths. Weeks turned to months, months into years. Matteo buried himself in work, restoring churches and theaters, but inside he was hollow, no matter where he went. Milan, Vienna, Florence, her shadow followed him. He tried to date again, tried to forget, but no other woman had her eyes. No touch felt like that night in the rain. His friend Enzo once told him, "You have to learn to move on." But how does one move forward when part of your soul has vanished without a single goodbye? In the 8th year since Isabella's disappearance, Matteo was working in his Florence studio when an unexpected visitor appeared. "Giulia De Luca," she introduced herself, her voice calm, her eyes heavy with knowing. "I'm Isabella's cousin." Matteo's breath caught at the name. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. Giulia pulled a weathered envelope from her coat. Inside was a newspaper clipping from Vienna, a feature on one of Matteo's restored opera houses, folded with it a single pressed flower. "A forget-me-not. This arrived at my home in Rome 3 years ago," she said. "No name, no note, but I know who sent it." Matteo said nothing, staring at the delicate blue petals as if they carried the weight of his entire past. "She didn't leave because she wanted to," Giulia continued. "Isabella was pregnant. After that night, when her father found out, he threatened to erase the pregnancy, and possibly erase you too." The room fell into stillness. Matteo's fingers clenched around the envelope, his heart pounding. For years he had lived with questions that had no answers. Now finally a door had opened, and the truth began to step through. Matteo was working in his Florence studio when an unexpected visitor appeared. "Giulia De Luca," she introduced herself, her voice calm, her eyes heavy with knowing. "I'm Isabella's cousin." Matteo's breath caught at the name. He hadn't heard it spoken aloud in years. Giulia pulled a weathered envelope from her coat. Inside was a newspaper clipping from Vienna, a feature on one of Matteo's restored opera houses. Folded with it, a single pressed flower. "A forget-me-not. This arrived at my home in Rome 3 years ago," she said. "No name, no note, but I know who sent it." Matteo said nothing, staring at the delicate blue petals as if they carried the weight of his entire past. "She didn't leave because she wanted to," Giulia continued. "Isabella was pregnant after that night. When her father found out, he threatened to erase the pregnancy and possibly erase you too." The room fell into stillness. Matteo's fingers clenched around the envelope, his heart pounding. For years, he had lived with questions that had no answers. Now, finally, a door had opened, and the truth began to step through. After meeting Giulia, Matteo couldn't stay still any longer. This time, he wasn't searching blindly. He had a name, Sofia Navarro, the alias Isabella had used, and a place, the coastal towns of southern Italy, where someone had once seen her. He set out along the Amalfi coast, Sorrento, Positano, Amalfi, stopping at bookshops, flower stands, quiet cafes. People smiled kindly, shook their heads, offered faint memories. Then, in a cramped little bookshop in Atrani, an old woman leaned in. "There was a woman named Sofia here," she whispered. "Left 2 years ago. She had twin boys, dark curls, bright eyes, looked like her, but there was something in them that didn't come from her." Matteo's breath caught. He was close, he could feel it. For the first time in 8 years, it wasn't a dream or a shadow he chased. It was her, and he was going to find her. That afternoon, the rain returned. It poured over the hills above Vietcri as if fate itself were recreating a long-lost moment. Matteo, umbrella folded and forgotten in his hand, hurried up the muddy path toward the small white cottage nestled among olive trees. The door creaked open just as he arrived. A woman stepped onto the porch and froze. Rain soaked her sweater, her hair clung to her cheeks, but her eyes, wide, stunned, disbelieving, were unmistakable. "Isabella," Matteo whispered, voice breaking. 2 boys burst out behind her, olive leaves in their hands, laughing. One of them saw him, tugged at her sleeve, and whispered, "Mama, is that Papa, the one from the pictures?" She didn't speak. Her lips trembled, her eyes filled. Then she nodded, "Yes, that's your father." Mateo climbed the steps, heart pounding. He looked at the two boys. Soft curls, familiar hazel eyes, children he hadn't known existed. Pieces of his soul, living and breathing before him. Isabella stepped forward and placed her hand against his chest, over the same heart that had never stopped beating for her. "I've searched for you for 8 years," Mateo said softly. She broke down, folding into his arms. And together, Mateo, Isabella, and the sons they never shared until now stood reunited in the rain, wrapped not only in water and tears, but in the love that had never left. Once the boys had drifted off to sleep, Mateo and Isabella sat by the fire, the soft crackling the only sound between them for a long moment. "You have every right to be angry," Isabella said, her voice hoarse from tears. "But you deserve the truth. I didn't disappear because I wanted to." She told him everything, how she discovered she was pregnant the morning after their night together, how her father, Lorenzo De Luca, powerful and ruthless, had threatened to erase the pregnancy, and if Mateo came near, he would take care of him too. "I left that night," she whispered. "No goodbye, no letter. I had to protect you and our children." Mateo was silent, pain tightening his chest. All those years of wondering, hurting, only to realize she had suffered alone, raising their sons in hiding. He reached for her hand. "I'm not angry," he said softly, "just heartbroken, for all the time we lost. But you don't have to run anymore. I'm here now, and I won't let you face another day alone." The next morning, golden sunlight slipped through the curtains as the boys tiptoed into the living room. Mateo was already there, gently holding one of their drawings, a pencil sketch of a towering castle. "Did you two draw this?" he asked, smiling warmly. Both boys nodded. Lorenzo, the bolder one, spoke up. "Mama says you're an architect. Is it true?" "It is," Mateo answered, his voice catching slightly, "and you both have my eyes." That morning, they built a small wooden model house together. Mateo showed them how to measure angles, steady foundations, the same lessons his own father once taught him. From the porch, Isabella watched silently, a warm mug in hand. For the first time in 8 years, she saw Mateo truly smile as one of the boys called out, "Papa, look at my roof." In that moment, family was no longer a distant hope. It was here, alive, and finally whole. A few days later, while Mateo and the boys were rebuilding the chicken coop, Isabella received a short, unsigned letter. In sharp, slanted handwriting, the Marino family requests a meeting to settle the past. Her hands trembled. The Marinos, relatives of the man her father once arranged for her to marry, a union built on status, not love, one she had fled from without a word. They arrived on a quiet afternoon. An older gentleman, refined yet stern, stood beside a younger man, the very one who had once been called her future husband. "We are not here to reclaim you," the elder Marino said. "We're here to protect our name. When you vanished, it made us look weak." Mateo stood beside Isabella, hand in hers. "We're not hiding anymore," he said calmly. "We're returning to Venice, with our sons, with pride. No more secrets." Isabella nodded. "If anyone asks, we'll tell them the truth. I chose love, not a contract signed behind closed doors." The older man glanced at the boys through the window, their laughter drifting out to the porch. His face softened. "Then let this be the end of it," he said quietly. "But at least they'll say you chose love over legacy." Their car pulled away, leaving behind a peace deeper than silence. A week after the meeting with the Marino family, the little cottage on the hillside was finally quiet. Truly quiet. No more anonymous letters, no more whispers from the past. Mateo and Isabella had begun packing. They were going back to Venice, not in hiding, not in fear, but as a family. "Where will we live?" Lorenzo asked as he helped his father fold a shirt. "Somewhere near the canals," Mateo smiled. close to where I first met your mother." Matteo, the quieter twin, looked at Isabella. "Will Nano know where we're going?" Before she could answer, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway stopped them all. Isabella stepped out onto the porch, and her body froze. Matteo followed her gaze and saw the man she had once feared more than any other. Lorenzo De Luca, her father, the powerful, ruthless man who had once ruled over her life like a shadow. Now he stood alone. No bodyguards, no polished car, just an old man with silvered hair holding his hat in trembling hands. "My daughter," he said softly, "give me a moment and a chance." No one spoke. Matteo gently ushered the boys back inside. Lorenzo stepped closer. 8 years. I searched for you in every way I knew, detectives, photos, money. But in time, I understood you didn't want to be found. "You told me you'd take care of Matteo if he came near me," Isabella replied, her voice tight. "You made me believe silence was the only way to protect him, and our sons." Her father bowed his head. "And I was wrong. The cruelest truth I've learned is that everything I claimed was for you was really for me. My pride, my legacy. I never asked what you wanted. I just decided." From his coat, he pulled a bundle of sketches, drawings Isabella had sent anonymously over the years to galleries, friends, small exhibits. "I collected them," he said quietly, "from everywhere. I didn't want to expose you. I just wanted to know you were still out there." Isabella's breath caught. Some of those sketches she barely remembered. One of Matteo, another of the boys sleeping, her visions of a life she never thought she'd have. "I only ask one thing," Lorenzo said, voice trembling. "Let me meet them, just once, my grandsons." She looked at Matteo. He didn't hesitate. He nodded gently. "They deserve to know their grandfather," he said, "not the man you were, but the one you can choose to be now." That afternoon, over a simple family meal on the back porch, Lorenzo De Luca sat between his 2 grandsons, telling stories of old Venice. There were no commands, no expectations, just a man trying to make peace with the time he had left. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, Matteo and Isabella sat quietly on the porch, hand in hand. "Do you think you'll ever truly forgive him?" he asked. "Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," she replied, "but it does mean accepting that people can change. And I want our sons to know that too, that mistakes don't define us, what we do next does." When they left the cottage days later, it wasn't a place of hiding anymore. It had become the closing chapter of an old book. And Venice was where their new story would begin. With their sons, with a love reborn, and with a family at last made whole. And that, dear soul, was their story. Matteo, Isabella, and a love that withstood the silence of years. If your heart feels a little softer right now, let it. Because real stories are meant to move us. They remind us it's never too late for healing, for forgiveness, and for a family made whole. What part of their journey touched you the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story brought even a moment of light to your day, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Until next time, lovely soul, stay kind, stay open. The best stories often begin when we think it's the end.